The iPhone 15 is going to get some shockingly cool new features, and Apple is absolutely furious.
This is bullshit.
Apple is well known for their obsessive control over every little part of the iPhone. But sorry, Tim, you're not calling the shots anymore because we make the rules now. So let me break down all the amazing new features the iPhone 15 is getting, because we just got some really good new info. Let me tell you the top 3 changes Apple is being forced to make with the iPhone 15 line, every single phone. And also let me tell you how you, yes you, are now in total control of the iPhone. Tim may be the chief Apple guy, but he's not the chief of the iPhone anymore. Let me tell you why.
Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device.
This right here is the single biggest moment in Apple history. It's the moment the iPhone was officially shown off to the world, and after this moment, everything changed. And it's pretty crazy to go back and see that very first iPhone and all the amazing things it could do. Funny enough, the phone you're seeing in this keynote actually didn't work. Apple engineers sort of MacGyvered this together, so if you opened certain apps and did certain things according to a very strict plan, the phone would work, but behind the scenes, the iPhone was not nearly done. So if Steve did one thing out of order, the entire iPhone keynote would crash and Apple would sort of be the laughingstock of the world, and the iPhone may not be the phone it is today. But luckily that didn't happen. Everything went off flawlessly, and obviously, well, this little thing totally changed the world. And year after year, time after time, we've seen Apple take more and more control over their products. They are obsessed about every little detail of their products, with the iPhone being one of their most important. They literally obsess over the tiniest little details. Every single marketing image, every frame of an iPhone commercial, they even obsessively go into the details of the innards of the phone to make sure when it's opened, if it's ever opened, it looks nice and clean, and there are Apple logos on the different components, which just shows you that they take this seriously and they take their obsessive detail to like a whole new level. And for many years, this obsessive control, or whatever you want to call it, over the iPhone made sense. With Steve Jobs at the helm, year after year, Apple obsessed over the iPhone, but they continued delivering feature after feature, upgrade after upgrade. Things were going great. But then when Tim Cook became Apple's CEO, the iPhone's direction and Apple's control over the iPhone kind of started to change in an interesting way. In fact, Apple's iPhone master plan really started to change when this happened, then this happened, and then this happened. By the mid-2010s, Android phones were not just a fad any longer. They were here to stay, and they were so popular and gaining so much consumer attention and love that they were forcing Apple to make a couple of particularly interesting changes to the iPhone. As much as those early Samsung customers might have been mocked and laughed at for having a phablet, as weird as that term was, it quickly became very popular, and many wanted Apple to respond. They loved their iPhones, but they loved the large screen Android experience even more. And after Apple increased the screen size of the iPhone 5 a little bit, and then most notably introduced finally a large screen iPhone with the 6 Plus, it was clear that Android and really the competition as a whole was really starting to influence the iPhone and forcing Apple to make some changes that probably weren't on their roadmap. And over the years, we've started to see Apple slowly but surely start to sort of cave to the pressure of the Android competition and really make some changes. We saw night mode photography and portrait mode photography really take off on Android phones, which forced Apple to add them to the iPhone. I think we all sort of owe LG some credit for popularizing the ultra-wide lens, which came to the iPhone with the iPhone 11 series. It's really awesome to see Android phones, the flagship phones on the green side of the aisle, really push the boundaries, and seeing Apple sort of have to be forced to respond. Obviously, Apple wouldn't admit it, and they'd want to do their own thing, but having this competition and having this fierce drive for innovation is so great because it has really over and over again pushed the iPhone to be better, whether Apple had planned to make those changes or they did it just to really compete with the competition. But while doing that, Apple has sort of been able to take their time with doing things. They can implement a feature how they want to, when they want to. They sort of set the rules and they can do what they want when they want to do it. But that may no longer be the case because some new laws and regulations are going into place around the world that is going to force Apple to make some changes, whether they like it or not. For example, the EU recently passed some legislation that is going to change the iPhone forever, and that is finally mandating a common charging port, which is going to switch the iPhone away from Lightning over to USB-C. The European Union sort of realized that having one common charging port and one cable sort of does make sense and is going to force all of these big tech companies to comply by 2024. And Apple might say, yeah, we were planning to do this or that, or they're going to give a lot of reasons as to why they think this is a bad move. But like it or not, they are going to be forced to comply, and they said they have plans to comply, and it looks like, according to all the leaks and rumors, the iPhone 15, for all models, is finally switching away from Lightning over to USB-C. Okay, so a couple of things to note. One is that I think for most of us, USB-C is a good thing. It's sort of nice to have one common charging cable and port to rule them all. Don't think many are too upset. Second thing to know is that Apple is not above breaking the rules and paying fines. There are many, many instances that you can find with a quick Google search of Apple choosing not to abide by local laws and opting instead to pay hefty fines of millions or tens of millions of dollars because that's just easier than making them change things on a product. Apple's certainly not above that, but that doesn't appear to be the case here. And in a recent interview, Apple execs again made the case as to why this USB-C transition isn't a good thing for Apple customers.
Obviously, we'll have to comply, but we think the approach would have been better environmentally and better for our customers to not have a government be that prescriptive.
Now, obviously, you can make the decision for yourself on whether you agree with that or not. It's going to be interesting. We can discuss in the comments down below. But let's talk about the second thing Apple is forced to do, another big change they're really not happy about, and that is that they're going to be forced to allow side-loading apps, third-party app stores or third-party app downloads on the iPhone, something they really do not want to do. Again, like USB-C, Apple has until 2024 to comply to this, and there have been some mixed reports on when we could see this. Some say that this will be a feature in iOS 17, though Apple did not talk about it. Some say that we might not see this until iOS 18, and there's also been a lot of reports on when we could see this. Some say that Apple is only going to make this an active feature in areas of the world where these laws are in effect, so it might not be an international feature, maybe it is an international feature. Basically, it looks like Apple is going to be forced to allow side loading on the iPhone, but it might not come to everyone everywhere. It's going to be really interesting to see how this one plays out as well. And then what could be the biggest blow to Apple's total control of the iPhone is number 3, and that is talks of new EU legislation that would require, quote, readily removable batteries that would go into law in 2027. Now, what constitutes a readily removable battery is sort of up for debate, and what companies this would apply to and what products it would apply to is still up for debate. But if this law was to pass, it would force Apple to make some easy way for the battery of an iPhone and maybe even other products to be readily and easily replaceable by users, which would be very interesting and might just totally change the design of future iPhones. And I think taking all of this into account, it is just going to be really interesting to see how the iPhone changes over the next few years, both in the realm of public pressure and also new laws and regulations and legislation and stuff like that. We're already seeing Apple be forced to make changes they don't want to on the iPhone 15, but we're also seeing Apple respond a lot more quickly to public pressure and again make changes they don't want to make because users are really upset. I think if we look at the butterfly keyboard, we look at the touch bar, we look at Apple re-adding ports to the MacBook Pro and other products, we're seeing that Apple is sort of more and more taking an active approach to listening to customers. And when customers have critique and they have feedback and they have things they want to see, Apple is kind of starting to do a little bit of a better job listening and adding those features back in, or adding features that many customers have always wanted to see. And while Apple has done a phenomenal job at implementing new technologies and bringing us new features and, to sort of borrow on some of Steve Jobs' old stories and sayings, Apple has done a good job of giving us what we wanted before we even wanted it. But also times are changing, and it's nice to see that Apple is more actively listening to customers. They're listening to critiques and feedback, and they are working on improving areas of the iPhone and other products and focusing on adding features that we want to see. times are starting to change, and that is a good thing. I think it honestly makes the iPhone better, and if they focus on big camera upgrades, they focus on better battery life, they focus on fixing some of the iPhone's shortcomings, I think that makes the iPhone better. I think it makes it more competitive, and I think it overall makes not the iPhone not only better, but Apple a better company. And honestly, I think listening to users and giving us what we want isn't always in the cards, but the more and more they can do this, and the better they can implement these new features, honestly just makes their products better and makes customers happier, if that sort of makes sense. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on Apple losing control over the iPhone? Do you think these new laws and regulations are a good thing or a bad thing? Are you happy about USB-C on the iPhone? Do you think that Apple should be forced to make readily replaceable batteries? What would you like to see Apple change on the iPhone that would make it better in your opinion? Is it more cameras? Is it a bigger screen, bigger battery? Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know what you'd like to see change on the iPhone 15. As always, I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you so much. I am Robert Rosenfeld from the Apple Circle, and I'll see you all in the next one.